Summer has arrived, but with it, potential dangers. We'll tell you how law enforcement is stepping up its efforts to keep our roads safe.
A night of remembrance in White Bear Lake honors cancer survivors and their amazing stories. We'll hear from a man who shares his cancer journey.
Welcome to Lake Area Beat. I'm Tracy Minarchek.
And I'm Kurt Frieson. We're embracing warmer days out here at Ramsey County Beach. And you're on vacation this week?
Kind of. 7 days off because we're switching schedules. I'm switching the days that I work, so I'm going to make the most of it. How about you for the summer?
Yeah, no huge plans. Spend time with the family, maybe go to the cabin and keep the kids entertained in the warm weather. Yeah,
Enjoy
absolutely.
Yeah. White Bear Lake has some beautiful beaches drawing swimmers to the area, but it's important to remain watchful of the water and the people in it.
Drowning doesn't look like the movies. It's not someone flailing around and screaming for help. It's usually pretty silent.
And newish fighter and paramedic Joe Selby has been on the department since October. He met up with our crew to tell us a little about himself and the importance of knowing CPR, especially at the beach.
I couldn't do an office job, that's not for me. And so I had a family member when I was growing up who was a firefighter, and so I was able to watch him go on fire calls and talk about the fire calls he was on. And so from a very young age that interested me, and then as I got older, the more that dream became a reality for me. Some of the things that I love, it's different every day. So some days we come in and we do a lot of medical calls. Other days we come in and we just go right to the fire calls, whether it be a house fire, whether it be a car fire, a fire alarm. It's just a different variety every day I come in. So it always keeps me on my toes. One of my first calls here, we brought somebody into the back of the ambulance and he stopped breathing and his pulse stopped. So we did what we could, and the positive end of this is that we did get him back at the hospital. So yeah, very positive outcome on one of my first calls here. When someone's drowning, they're not gonna be yelling for you. A couple of things you can look for is it'll look like they're trying to climb an invisible ladder, so you'll see like arm motions going up and down, but you might not necessarily see a head. And another type of thing you can look for is like the body floating. So they're probably going to be face down, floating up on top of the water. One of the things that we talk about when we teach CPR is early compressions and getting breaths in as quick as you can. Anytime you're out and about in the community, knowing CPR is going to be a good thing, just because you never know what could happen. At any given moment, someone could fall down in front of you and their heart could stop. You know, you could be out at the beach on a nice day with your family and someone could go under the water, and not everybody knows what to do. I am a full-time firefighter paramedic, and I get to help the community and I get to help change lives and make the world a better place.
White Bear Lake Fire will have several opportunities for folks to learn CPR coming up this year. You can register on the city's website if you are interested in one of those courses.
The 4th of July is a cause for celebration, but too much speed and alcohol can turn your holiday into a tragedy. Officer John Sanders will be among the increased enforcement looking for offenders. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And you're actually in the middle of a detail right now, so...
We're working crosswalk enforcement today.
Yeah, so thank you for taking a few minutes to talk to us. There's a lot of celebrating going on throughout July, and historically a lot of drunk driving and arrests happen during the 4th of July. There's going to be some extra enforcement and some different campaigns that we're going to have for the police department. Can you tell us what those are?
Yeah, the first one does focus around the 4th of July. It happens to be Friday, July 5th. It's a county-wide Towards Zero Deaths effort. And so all of the agencies within Ramsey County will be sending officers to one centralized location to do some DWI enforcement that Friday night after the 4th of July. Then in August, we have the county-wide DWI campaign that goes from the middle of August through Labor Day. Statistically, they find that the end of August before Labor Day is big for festivities and drinking and driving. So the enforcement wave goes for about 2.5 weeks through that time period. And we are currently in a speed wave that started in the middle of June, and it's going through July 21st of this year.
So can you tell us how speed factors into crashes, road fatalities during these warmer months?
Yeah, I would say complacency. It's the biggest thing. The most crashes we go to are on sunny, dry days when there's no issues with the pavement, no snow, no rain. I believe that people just become too comfortable driving. They maybe get a little bit risky with their cell phone use or increase their speeds because the roads are nice. And I think that complacency is the issue.
Yeah.
They list the 100 deadliest days are from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Yeah. Now, will your enforcement be looking at distracted driving as well?
Yep, distracted driving is going to be huge too with the new law starting on August 1st of this year. It's the hands-free law is what they're calling it, and basically you cannot have your cell phone in your hand at all. And the only exception would be if you have to call 911. That's the only exception. Otherwise, people need to get onto the Bluetooth. People need to put the phones in the glove box, in the center console, do whatever they need to do so it's not in their hands starting August 1st.
And the wave you're doing today right now behind us is pedestrians and crosswalks, and pedestrian deaths are up. And how does that look for citations and stuff in our area?
Yeah, this winter was challenging for law enforcement and the pedestrian enforcement because it was such an unusual winter. We had lots of snow. I think we had like 20, 30 inches of snow within a couple weeks. And it became a challenge because pedestrians were walking on roadways because sidewalks weren't properly plowed. The snowbanks were so high that there were blind spots at intersections, and so cars would round corners and not see pedestrians. And so we did have a spike of pedestrian fatalities this last winter. I think there were 10 from January to the middle of March alone. And once the snow began to melt, those did slow down, thankfully, and we don't like to see it. And so we're going to continue those efforts into summer with our crosswalk campaign.
And so what are you looking for today behind us? At this intersection, but there's other intersections You'll be at.
So we'll be out here all summer long. This is the first event for the 2019 campaign. And we're going to be at various marked crosswalks across the city of White Bear Lake all summer long. And what we do is we're doing our enforcement efforts by following the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration guidelines. And because this is a 40-mile-an-hour stretch, the guidelines say that the safe stopping distance to recognize a pedestrian in a crosswalk and come to a stop without causing a pileup of cars is 266 feet for this particular intersection. So we're using 96 and Pacific right now. What I do is measure out the cone distance at 266 feet in either direction of the crosswalk. And then I have officers who are in marked or unmarked squad cars down the road. And when a violation occurs, that means someone entered the cone line and then proceeded through the crosswalk past the pedestrians. It's a violation of the law, the crosswalk law, and then those chase cars would go and stop the violator, talk to him, and ask two questions. We're asking, one, did you see the pedestrians? And a lot of the common mistakes are, no, we didn't. And then the follow-up question is, well, were you distracted? Were you on your phone? Were you turning the radio knob? And we want to try to just get to the bottom of why people aren't paying attention for pedestrians and crosswalks.
Right. And pedestrians can act as a part of the safety as well. How do they play a role in it?
Absolutely. Like most roads, two-way streets. Cars have to watch for pedestrians, but pedestrians also need to do their part. Life shouldn't be like a game of Frogger. Don't just dart across a busy highway or a busy road. Go to the nearest intersection. Every semaphore light, unless marked or posted no crossing, should have a crosswalk that you can utilize. It typically works with the traffic flow to make sure that you get across a busy roadway safely. And just pay attention to, unfortunately, pedestrians are gonna be in trouble if they run out, because cars are unfortunately going to win. So pedestrians.
Cars need to stop for pedestrians, but pedestrians also need to not jump out in front of
Correct.
traffic, right?
They need to do their part,
Yeah.
watch for traffic, and cross at the crosswalks.
Yeah. And you have any fun summer plans that don't involve extra enforcement this summer?
I do. I have changed my lifestyle a little bit. I've been eating healthier, working out a little bit more, and I'm going to be attending a lot more of our summer events.
Nice.
The floats with the fuzz coming up and donuts with the cop. Not good for the for the health kick,
diet,
but we'll get through it, and I hope to see people out there.
Perfect. Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, John.
Fireworks are a summertime tradition, especially on the 4th of July. But unfortunately, they result in too many injuries when placed in the wrong hands. I'm Sergeant John Vetty with a few ways to keep it safe and legal. There's an average of more than 70 trips to the ER every year in Minnesota due to fireworks injuries, and approximately 40% of those are from children. Always make sure your kids are supervised. Although sparklers are legal in Minnesota, more than 30% of fireworks injuries are caused by them. Fireworks that explode or shoot into the air are illegal in Minnesota. Leave that to the professionals. Finally, always make sure to point fireworks away from people and animals. Use them in an open space, away from structures, and extinguish them in a bucket of water. We want everyone to have fun and be safe, so make sure to practice some common sense when it comes to fireworks. I'll see you next time.
People have a misconception that suicide rates drop in warmer months, but according to the CDC, rates are highest in late spring and early summer.
It's important to know there are resources and education available for those who need help.
The most frustrating part as a dad was I didn't know how to help him.
Robert Swanson is part of a group no parent wants to belong. His son Michael, who lived with bipolar disorder, died by suicide at 33. Suicide rates are increasing in the United States, including Minnesota. According to the CDC, about half of suicide victims had a known mental health condition. Swanson says part of the problem is the misperception of mental illness.
If our son walked in right now, he'd have a big smile. You'd think nothing's wrong with him. Inside was that pain trying to even get through the day. The smile was a mask. So because of the shame and stigma, people by and large still wear a mask. So we're talking about it, but we still look at people with mental illness and go, well, what's wrong with, why don't they get fixed, you know? Take care of it, take your meds. It's not that simple.
NAMI, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is a grassroots organization with 20 chapters in Minnesota. Swanson first became familiar with NAMI when he sought support for his family.
The biggest part was we found hope in that there were other families dealing with the same thing. That we didn't feel alone, and we felt we could share our innermost fears and concerns with other people that were living with similar journeys.
Kay King is the community educator for NAMI Minnesota, which provides education, support, and advocacy, though not direct services. She says everyone should have, at the very least, a basic education on mental health, and NAMI Minnesota provides many classes, most of which are free. In her experience, she's helped older adults understand what mental illness looks like.
I had a woman come up to me and say, oh, now I know what my dad lived with. And my discussion was older adults and depression. So she, who looked like she perhaps was in her late 70s, was able to say, my dad was a farmer. I guess that's maybe what he lived with, was major depression.
NAMI Minnesota relies heavily on volunteers, and Robert Swanson has found helping others has helped him to a degree, though some wounds never entirely heal.
It's been 9 years. I have some people I have the feeling, well, get over it. I mean, it's been 9 years. I'll never get over it.
White Bear Lake's Relay for Life is filled with so many stories of hope and survival. It's truly amazing if you've never been to an event.
Survivor Steve Hines is celebrating 10 years of being cancer-free. Steve, thanks for coming out and joining us today.
We appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me. Appreciate
Good seeing you again.
Good to see you.
We'd like to first mention that you were in law enforcement with Maplewood, right?
Right, yeah, I worked for Maplewood for almost 30 years and retired in 2009.
And you were behind the camera too.
I was, yeah. Yeah, we had a We had a show through Maplewood, Your Police Report, that was on for many years, and I was fortunate to be able to be one of the hosts.
Nice.
Perfect. And could you tell us when you were diagnosed and what type of cancer that was?
So I was actually diagnosed in October of 2008 with prostate cancer, and it was found out just by routine tests. I was very fortunate that my regular GP had decided to start doing the blood testing early, the PSA tests, and then he said after one of them was abnormal, a little bit higher, not a lot, just a little bit higher, and he noticed that on his exam that I was asymmetrical. My prostate was not symmetrical. He said, I think we should do biopsies, and that's how it was discovered. So I was very, very fortunate, discovered very early. I was 49 at the time of my diagnosis, and it was just a few months later that I had surgery to have that removed. So it's pretty.
How did all of that feel for you? Was it?
It was really a strange feeling when you hear somebody tell you, and this was over the phone, by the way. I was getting ready to go on an explorer trip to Duluth.
Wow.
And so I was out in front of the police department next to this big 15-passenger van getting ready for all of our explorers to load up so we could take them up north. And I got a phone call and I answered it, and my doctor said, well, I just wanted to let you know the test was unfortunately, it was positive, and you do have cancer. And I thought to myself, did I just hear what he said? And he said, but I said, well, I'm just getting ready to go on this trip. And he said, well, don't worry about it. We'll talk again on Monday when you get back, and we'll get things all figured out. Okay. So I hung up with him and I called my wife. Now, I was assuming that I would maybe be able to be next to her in a doctor's office hearing that news. And to have to call her on the phone and tell her that, it was excruciating because I couldn't be there, she couldn't be there. And that was one of the hardest parts for me. Now, what ended up happening is that when I got back from the weekend, what I found on the desk by the computer was a stack of papers, because she had been researching all weekend long on different therapies for cancer, for prostate cancer, and specifically. So what she took as this huge negative, she just funneled all that energy into research and trying to figure out what the best options were.
That must have been so difficult to be a part and to get some news like that, and then have to actually, you're kind of doing your job too. With the kids and the explorers and going on your trip.
Right, and you want, especially with our explorers, you want them to have a good time, right, and really enjoy the experience. So everything got pushed to the back burner. But that following Monday, we jumped right in and figured out what we were going to do, and then we just had to pick a date to get that taken care of.
And walk us through really quickly your treatment.
So what I eventually decided to do, I looked at a bunch of them. I decided to do the Da Vinci robotic surgery. That was performed at United Hospital, and what that involves is just, instead of the typical incision and opening up, they just pretty much just put instruments into you, and they actually peel away the nerves and everything from the prostate. And once that's removed, they just pull it out of a little hole by your belly button, which is just the weirdest thing to think about. but they did, and the healing time was a lot more minimal than had I had an open type surgery. So it was really hard to do all of that, to get through it. I had great support. My wife was wonderful throughout the whole thing, and my family. I've got a history of cancer in my family, so they were very supportive. And so the treatment really became the rehab process, because even if they do the surgery perfectly, the nerves are stunned by that surgery. And so it takes a while to get urinary control and sexual response. All of those things come slowly through a rehab process. But the doctors and everybody was just phenomenal about treating all of that and getting me back to being healthy. And here I am 10 years later, just enjoying life. And it's just great.
And how has it changed your relationships, your family, and maybe new people that you meet? How has that changed?
What's interesting is, and this kind of goes back to Relay, because I meet so many different people at Relay that either have the same cancer or had the same cancer, now they're cured, or people that are battling cancer. And so those relationships become just super tight right away. And so a lot of my friends now, and a lot of my Facebook friends and people that I associate with, they're cancer survivors. You know, not only that, I've got family that are cancer survivors. So it's amazing. And the other thing is, you look at every single day and you think, I'm here. Right. I'm above ground. I'm going to enjoy this day. Right? I'm going to live life to its fullest.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And congratulations on the 10 years.
Thank
and
you.
Hopefully many more.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming out with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. This year's Relay for Life is Friday, July 26th at the South Campus track. Congratulations to all the survivors making the lap. Coming up after the break,
The young man who's become known as the Donut Boy makes a stop at White Bear Lake. We'll tell you what business owner helped out on his journey of thanks. Donut Boy, otherwise known as Tyler, has been traveling the country thanking police with donuts.
he stopped in White Bear Lake where Grandma's Bakery donated to his cause. He's hoping to thank every cop in America. He took a ride on White Bear Lake with the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department, and he says that Minnesota rocks. He even hashtagged on his Facebook page, Minnesota Nice meets Southern Hospitality. What a remarkable young man.
The White Bear Lake Police Department hosted its annual bike rodeo at the Public Works Department. They typically put on some interesting demonstrations for families and provide food and prizes for all for free.
It's all in the name of biking safety, and there were over 40 kids there. So a lot of great education for those young riders.
Do you recycle? We hope you do, of course, but are you up to speed when it comes to your cart's contents?
In an effort to educate our residents, we asked people about their recycling habits and visited the site where it all ends up. Looks like we're doing well, but we can always do better.
It's good news that Minnesota ranks in the top 10 of the greenest states, but we can always do better. And it got us thinking, what about the recycling habits of White Bear Lake residents? Not only if they recycle, but if they know what can and cannot be recycled. So we hit the streets of downtown for some unofficial research.
What percentage of people do you think recycle statewide?
Statewide. What percentage? Maybe
Go with 50.
I'm going to go with Minnesota being such a great health conscious. I'm going to say, even though they're health conscious, recycling is different. I'll go with 40.
What about you?
I'm gonna go with 40.
Okay, 44%, so you were right, yeah.
So we have a garbage bin and a recycling bin, and recycling, I think, goes out to our bigger bin probably 3 times a week versus garbage like once a week.
Yep.
We definitely have overflow our recycling bin every time.
Is there one of you who takes the lead in your recycling?
I do, yes indeed, they go. We have 2 separate bins, okay. We have 2 separate bins, and I definitely put one in the recycling that needs to be recycled. It goes there, yes. It does not go into the trash.
Why is it important for your family to recycle?
Because it's a nice thing to do.
I am going to show you a few visuals, okay? You tell me if they can or cannot be recycled. So here we've got a battery.
Can be recycled, do you believe?
Not in the combo though.
No, not in the street side. That's just go to like the batteries plus and stuff like that. They'll take them.
Hangers we've got next.
No.
They metal or?
Yeah.
Plastic or metal. Any
wood.
Any variation.
Yeah? No.
No. Christmas tree, string lights.
I would say no.
I'll definitely go with no. No. Definitely not on that.
And you'd be right. Have you ever busted Stephanie for putting something in that she shouldn't have?
More than putting things in the garbage, yes, I think, than...
No, you always yell at me about the aluminum foil and the pizza boxes that I always try to recycle.
Yeah.
You can take pizza boxes.
Even if they're oily?
Even if they're oily. Yep. I hope I'm not going to cause any conflicts in your relationship.
The more we can recycle, the better.
These are dirty diapers.
No.
No. And again,
They're in the recycling?
Some people are throwing them in recycling. These are beer bottles.
Yep.
Can you recycle these?
That's glass. Yes, you could.
I would say yes. Why do you recycle and why would you tell other people to recycle?
Well, I guess I recycle because the idea of things going to a landfill and just going to be dumped in a waste. For one thing, there's a limited amount of space, and that just seems wasteful.
Because I think very simply that makes our planet a little bit better.
It's promising these environmentally conscious residents recycle, and clearly they have a good grasp of the can and cannots, but the goal is for everyone to get it right. Household recycling in White Bear Lake is transported to Eureka Recycling in Northeast Minneapolis. The plant focuses on selling to local markets to decrease the environmental impact and increase local development. 80% of their recycled material stays in Minnesota, 10% in the Midwest, and 100% in North America. During our tour, we captured the massive undertaking of workers sorting through materials by hand, removing items that can't be recycled.
Right now, about 6 or 7% of what comes in, we're not able to recycle. And that we've heard it's a lot higher in other states. It might be 15 to 30%. So I would say in Minnesota, people are doing pretty good, but we could always do better. And we've definitely seen an increase in the amount of non-recyclables since more cities have switched to single stream in the carts.
Most of us know that paper, cardboard, glass bottles, and most plastic food and beverage containers can be recycled. But paper egg cartons, styrofoam, dishes, freezer boxes, scrap metal, plastic bags, these don't belong in your cart. In fact, scrap metal and plastic bags can damage their equipment, slicing belts, jamming motors, and even causing fires, not to mention the hazard to workers. Batteries, especially cell phone and computer, can cause explosions if they're smashed, and propane tanks can take flight if punctured. Holsinger admits the process can be confusing, but she's hopeful education as well as manufacturing changes will help.
Waste is preventable. It's a man-made phenomenon. You know, there's no waste in nature. So if we just quit designing things without thinking about how can they be recycled or composted, then we can definitely get to zero waste and get to zero contamination in our facility.
I know, it may seem like a lot to digest, but Eureka makes it easy. You can call or click to find out exactly what you can put into your recycling cart, and there's an app you can download to ask about specific items. And we know if the folks we talked to earlier in the video care about doing the right thing. Hopefully, you do too.
Well, we thank you guys for doing your part. It sounds like you're responsible recyclers. So far, the people we've talked to in White Bear Lake recycle. So that's good news.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Lake Area Beat.
We want to wish everyone a safe and happy 4th of July. See you next time.
Some of the things that I love about it is
Is he messing with you?
I don't know.
Officer John Sanders, not Jan.
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 Hey, Jan.
Hey, Jan. Sorry.
Get distracted by that cool pontoon. Look at it.
I thought it was a fire truck, and so I got distracted by it too.
Asking for a problem. But
Why'd you laugh at that line? Y'all come back now, you hear?